everyone. Hello and welcome back to Autism Fridays with Christopher Cleveland. This month's discussion corner video will feature a very special guest, a former teacher of mine, Miss Mary Walker-Irvin. So firstly, Mary, how you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm doing just fine, Chris. It's good to see you again.
Great to see you again, too. For those that might not know at home, can you tell us a little bit about your credentials, your current profession, if it's different from your credentials, and anything else you'd like the audience to know right away?
Okay, well, the only credentials I have are as a meteorologist for the Air Force that I retired from, and now as a secondary science teacher. So I'm a high school science teacher, and I teach a variety of students, including I've had many that are on the autism spectrum over the years. And I also have a younger sister who has autism. So I've got 50 years worth of experience dealing with her.
And it's terrific that you say that. So it's not on my list of initial questions, but I am curious to know, what's been the most interesting observation about the changes in the science behind diagnosing autism or recognizing like that there's a spectrum, for example, that you've seen in your lifetime?
Oh boy, it's night and day difference. It's horse and buggy versus a Tesla, because back when my sister was diagnosed, I mean, it took a couple of years to locate somebody who actually knew what it was and could diagnose the condition in her. And at that point in time, they, for some reason, believed that only boys got autism. And so they were really surprised when my sister had it. And they didn't know really how to deal with anyone with autism. And so sadly, she didn't get the education and training opportunities that young folks do now. They just basically warehoused her with severely disabled students until she was 18 years old, and she'd aged out and said, well, go have a nice life with your parents. That was pretty much the end of it.
That is unfortunate. And it sounds, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like at the time your sister was diagnosed, this was more the age of when what we knew about autism was limited to Leo Kanner's discovery
Pretty much, yeah.
of the disorder.
Yep, absolutely. They just really didn't know much. There was no spectrum. You either had it or you didn't. And
if I recall right, this was at the same time that Hans Asperger's Asperger syndrome was considered related but separate.
Yes. Yes, they thought that, yeah, rather than being part of a continuum, if it wasn't so bad, you had Asperger's, and if it was to where you were almost non-communicative, then they put you in the group with autism, and there wasn't really any in between.
That makes sense, and it's definitely it sounds like it's been amazing, at least as far as you being a witness to how the science has grown so much, and we now know they're part of a spectrum. There are levels of functionality. There are different disorders that often join up with an autism diagnosis, but aren't necessarily autistic themselves.
Exactly. For example, I've learned in recent years that the fact that my sister has pretty major league anxiety is not really very uncommon. A lot of people on the spectrum have anxiety for one reason or another, and she also has depression, which again apparently is not all that uncommon, depending on things. So yeah, they've learned an awful lot, and it's really great that I get to have autistic students in my classes and teach them alongside the rest of the students. And it makes me happy for them, but also sad that my sister didn't get those opportunities, because she's really smart. She's got a memory. I would love to trade memories with her, because she'll remember birthdays for, like, the in-laws and everybody else. And if it weren't for my reminders on my smartphone, I'd forget where I need to be tomorrow. And so I would love to have memory.
So in other words, she was your living data bank before the internet came up with data banks.
Pretty much, yes.
So just autistic or not, what inspired you to teach in general?
Well, I was thinking of retiring from the military just because I had my two daughters by that point in time, and I felt like I was missing a lot of things in their lives because I would be gone a lot, being deployed different places. And I wanted to be there for my own daughters a lot more. And so I started looking around for civilian careers I could do after I got out. And the only thing I could find with meteorology would involve shift work, which I didn't want to have to do anymore because I was done with graveyard shift, most especially. And so at the time, the military had a program they called Troops to Teachers, to where if you already had a bachelor's degree in something, you could sign up for and take some additional classes in pedagogy and in basically how to teach what you know. And then you could get hired on, and over the first couple of years of being supervised and by a certified teacher, in my case, Dr. Wren at high school. And then after 3 years of basically on the job training, I got my teaching certificate. And so it just, like I said, it sounded fun. When I found out about Troops to Teachers, I thought, ooh, I could teach science because I really like science. I just absolutely adore science, and I would love to pass some of that information and hopefully some of the passion along that I have for science to younger folks to take over for the the future generations.
That
And so
makes
that's
sense.
that's how I got into teaching. I mean, when I was first exploring, I tried substituting at elementary and middle school and high school levels, all three. And I don't have the energy to be an elementary school teacher. I don't know how those people, holy mackerel.
Yeah.
And middle school was just really tough because tweens are just starting to feel all the hormones and the emotional
Oh,
extremes. And I thought, wow, I really can't deal with that either. But high school, I got along with the high school classes I subbed for really well. So I thought, yep, that's where I belong.
as kind of a teacher myself, I'm already amazed by how many of those points just sound so familiar to me
I bet.
in my line of work. But at any rate, if you had to take like all the autistic kids that you've ever worked with across the board and name one thing that was your favorite about working with all of them, myself included, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. Um, I like the fact that the autistic students can stay focused and do what they need to do. I've never met an autistic student who didn't love to read. I had one, he graduated a couple of years ago, but he would walk around, do his various classes in high school, carrying 3 or 4 good-sized library books with him. And oh, I know. So I asked him, are you reading all of those at once? And he said yes. And I thought, wow, how do you keep all the different storylines straight in your head? But he thought it was weird that I couldn't. So that was really amazing to me. And I know that you as well as others just really love to read, and you were really focused when you did stuff, so that I didn't have to keep trying to redirect you from visiting with your classmates the whole
Yeah,
time.
yeah. And I remember one memory that actually sticks out to me, speaking of the focus from when you were my teacher,
Hmm.
10th grade biology, we were doing the end of year dissections. And
Oh,
I was kind of disappointed by how long I took in relation to the rest of the groups that were in class, because I was the only one that was, doing everything.
yeah.
And I was feeling down about that. And I remember you said that you would have rather had someone be thorough, take their time, make
Mhm.
sure they did it right, than have the groups that were like, okay, I'm done, pretty much.
Yep.
And that always stuck with me because, that the thing about science that I think you and I can agree.
Oh.
Hold on. Sorry about that,
Mhm.
folks. Technical detail. Um,
Okay.
anyway, it tends to reward the people that are patient, thorough,
Yep.
and make sure they go over the details as much as possible before submitting something. Case
Definitely.
in point, Charles Darwin taking, what was it, 3, 5 years to record his information for the Galapagos Islands?
Yeah, it was about 5 years, and he waited almost another five, but when he finally put his whole theory of evolution together before he finally published it. And really, he only published it because somebody else had written a letter to him asking for his opinion on his paper that he was about to publish. And Darwin's like, well, no, because I did it first. So he finally published, but he wanted to make sure he got it right. And of course, still ended up in all kinds of trouble for it. But, that's just the way it goes with anybody who's out on the leading edge of things.
That's true. So I guess getting back on the script, I guess you can call it. In regards to COVID-19 and everything to do with it, what would you say has been your biggest challenge in being of benefit to your students, whether they're autistic or not?
Oh, boy. Not knowing. Not having really any idea, what it's going to be like even next week, or, forget about next month or next trimester or in the spring. Uncertainty, I guess, it's the hardest part for everybody across the board. And with the autistic students, and also with my sister, change, because I know she and other autistic students that I've had like to have things in a very orderly fashion, and you don't mess with the schedule, otherwise it just throws the entire system off kilter. And I know the changes, and it's not been just a change, it's been a whole bunch of changes, and you just finally get used to one thing, and then they're like, oh nope, that one didn't work, let's try this over here. And the change has just been really hard.
Yeah, I remember saying to another former student from not my class, but a class before, that had this pandemic come in my time, under the circumstances that it did, I would have been like, anything to have a sense of normalcy again, anything to have some sense of what was familiar to me before this happened.
Exactly. Because everything
anyway,
is so strange.
Yeah, it is pretty strange. Anyway, in regards to COVID-19 and everything to do with it, what has amazed you positively about your students?
Well, they've surprised me in that they're a lot more adaptable than I thought they would be. They seem to be following the one-way hallways thing, and taking in stride the fact that they don't have a locker to keep their stuff in, so they drag around their gigantic backpacks with them all day. Their adaptability, at least in that way, they're still grumbling and complaining for sure, but at least they're doing it. So it's
Yeah, that's true. I remember the first time I ever saw the precautions that the high school took, and I thought to myself, wait, is everyone getting ready to take a hike?
yeah. No, they decided that it would be too difficult to try to keep. Oh shoot, my chili's boiling over. Sorry. That it would be too difficult to try to keep the lockers sanitized, and
That's
a lot
true.
of students will let their friends store their lunch or their coat or whatever in their locker, and
Yeah,
then increases the chances of the spread of this thing.
yeah. And already, if you have like the football players together in a line, God knows the Axe body spray smell is gonna spread before long.
Yep, for sure. So
Um,
we're seeing that all over the state with various different sports teams, the entire team being quarantined because one or
oh
two of them
yeah.
are positive, and they've all been in these close quarters. And so the whole team and the managers and the coaches and referees in some cases.
Yeah, that's got to be tedious. Um, so also continuing on the COVID-19 questions, are your hopes or your one biggest hope for the future of your students? Like when all this is done, the dust has settled, what's your hope for their future?
One of the biggest hopes, I guess, would be that they learn from this that you do need to trust science. Politics is politics, but science really doesn't care what your opinion is. Basically, it is what it is. And I'm hoping that the students get a point that they get through is that the scientists have been telling us all along that this was a thing that was not going to be easy to deal with. And even once we do get a vaccine, it's not going to go away overnight. And so people have kind of got these unrealistic expectations, at least the adults do. And so I'm hoping maybe the students will kind of slow down and go, yeah, we're going to have to be patient. We're going to have to learn to deal. And so, I mean, they were looking out for one another, and hopefully that continues as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember having a couple of my mentees ask me about, when the vaccine's invented, will this go away and all that stuff? And I've had to say, if the 1918 flu pandemic is anything to go by, I don't think the vaccine's going to be the snap of the finger solution that we're seeking.
No,
Because even when the vaccine was invented, it still took a year or two for things to completely die down.
that's true. That's true. And well, I was discussing at lunchtime with one of the other science teachers that with the polio that was such a widespread killer of young people, and if it didn't kill you a lot of time, it left you paralyzed or partially paralyzed. And even once they developed the Salk vaccine for polio, it was 5 or 6 years before the polio had pretty much disappeared from the planet. It takes a while to get everybody vaccinated, and
Yeah,
enough herd immunity to where the people can't get vaccinated are still protected.
yeah, that's true. So I guess you can call this my final COVID question for now. But your hopes aside and all that, what is your biggest concern for their future, or maybe even your biggest fear?
My biggest concern, biggest fear is probably the kids whose parents were too afraid to let them come back to school in person, and they've been trying to do the whole school thing online, because that's really hard. That takes an awful lot of personal control and impulse control. You have to regiment yourself to follow a schedule, to log on and do all the work. And I know that learning mode is failing an awful lot of kids, not just on the autism spectrum,
Yeah,
but
that's
all
true.
of them. And I'm really concerned that we may end up, and it's not just a Brand County thing or a Utah thing, it's like everywhere. And I'm afraid we're going to end up with a whole generation of people that are really not adequately educated to go into the future and be the doctors and the engineers and everything in the future, because of
Yeah, I
this
agree.
kind of knocking everybody down for a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. And one of my concerns with what I do in Beacon After School is the kids' social maturity and emotional intelligence. Because even if you do everything right and online education is working for your kids, there's still that then added weakness that you're not around your peers that much if you're a kid, and you're not going to have the age appropriate contact you need in order to integrate yourself into the world, even if you're not autistic.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely another concern for the kids that are online, is that they're not interacting with their peers or really much of anybody outside of their own family. And it makes it difficult if you don't kind of keep in practice of being around other people and interacting with them, learning what to say, what not to say, when to be
I
honest,
love
when to maybe not say anything at all, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love that you called it practice with interaction. I
Yeah.
mean, just about all the social equity I've got to be constantly thinking about how to use it. So I love that you called it practice.
Yep.
In a non-COVID question, in your time as a teacher, what would you say has been a highlight of working with people on the autism spectrum? And if there is anything that would be considered a drag, what would that be?
Oh goodness, a highlight. Um, I just am so pleased to see that that everything's progressed beyond the point that my sister was at. That now autistic students get to be in the same classes as their peers. They learn the same stuff. They're really dedicated and focused, and just as good a student as anyone else. You really can't can't pick them apart, except, you know, in a couple of cases, maybe they don't interact with their peers quite as completely, but, you know, that's just part of the being on the spectrum. But that's really been the greatest thing, is I love to see that that people on the autism spectrum are largely being given the same opportunities as everybody else now to
Yeah, I
lead a
agree.
fulfilling and productive life.
Yeah, I agree. That is even just the changes from when I was your student versus some of the kids that I've got now have been phenomenal as far as the opportunities go. I even have a student I work with that has Social Security coming to him right now. And
Nice.
I'm like, dang.
That's nice.
Yep.
That's nice.
So is there anything that would be considered a drag? And if so, what would it be?
Hmm. Well, the only thing I could think of that might be a drag is the ones that are really severely in kind of in their own little realm, and
Oh,
to
yeah.
where I have a difficult time getting them to join the class and do some of the things that they need to do, and not freak out if the fire alarm goes off and run and hide someplace and things like
Oh,
that.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see how that would be difficult, especially because in a pre-COVID class, you're looking at like what, 29 other kids,
Oh yeah.
excluding that
Yeah.
one?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm trying to keep track of where everybody is and make sure everybody gets out of the building, and we're, you know, account for everybody out the football field. And then, like I said, when I can't find somebody because they freaked out and ran and hid when the fire alarm went off, that's
Yeah,
quite a
that makes
challenge.
sense. Oh, yeah. I could see how that would be a problem. If everyone in the world that had like an autistic parent or a relative of some kind or was autistic themselves or did any work with autism, if anyone that had any involvement at all with the disorder was watching this video right now, and by that I mean everyone in the world, what would you want them to learn from this video?
The people on the autism spectrum are really not that much different from everyone else. It seems like it's largely a communication issue, and a maybe not being able to read emotions quite as well, but they're every bit as intelligent as, you know, across the board as any other group of human beings. There's going to be some that are a little smarter and others that maybe are a little more average, but they're really, from everything I've experienced, just as intelligent, just as capable as their non-autistic peers. And to not
Yeah.
count them out or sell them short, that they can still to have a meaningful and productive life and have a job outside, you know, high school, and go to college, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember in my social development project that I was doing with Beacon before the shutdown, something that I actually said that a student of mine admitted was the case in his makeup, I guess you could call it, was that I have students that are very capable of empathy and emotions
Mhm.
like that. Their trouble is articulating or expressing it in a way that others can understand.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely. I've heard multiple times, for example, that, oh, people with autism don't get sarcasm or subtleties, and they have not met my sister, because holy cow, she speaks sarcasm just as fluently as the rest of the family does.
yeah, like it can happen. I mean, I can see what you mean, but yeah, like I was terrible with sarcasm when you had me as a student.
Yeah,
Uh, in fact, I think you pulled one over on me a couple of times.
probably.
um,
Yeah,
but
we all
yeah,
speak sarcasm to one another around here, so I got to try to remember not to do that as much at school.
yeah, but yeah, but in my case, it was continuous practice, especially when Boyd would do it, that helped me learn it really well. Because I mean, you know better than I do, when it's contextually appropriate, man, Boyd can be the king of sassafras.
Oh, that's for sure. Yep.
um, I guess it looks like I got one more pandemic question.
Okay.
So, in regards to everything to do with the pandemic, from the time that the virus first emerged to where we are now, What do you think is the most important thing that parents and other local figures like the mayor, the police should know to help you in what you do?
Um, Basically just to try to keep communication lines open and let us know what to expect, hopefully before, it's like, oh my gosh, now we have to change everything and start doing this. If you give us a little bit of a heads up, then we can help prepare not just the autistic students, but everybody that, oh, this is changing and here's how we're going to deal with it. Because the knee-jerk reactions are pretty hard to deal with for everybody, but especially so for people with autism.
In other words, if possible, you would like anywhere between 2 to 3 days heads up that, say, a student is going to be removed from your class, or rather, that's something you would like to see happen as a standard for the high school.
Yeah, just to give us a couple of days advance notice of really big changes. Like, oh goodness, if all of a sudden they decided that we had to put up, I don't know, shower curtains between everybody in the classroom or whatever like that, it would be
Yeah,
nice
that
to
makes
know
sense.
a little bit in advance so that I could say, so it's not because y'all have bad breath or anything. We have to put these things up so that we can keep from, spreading the virus around to people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, just to
I
get clear
remember,
open communication.
yeah, I remember there was, if I remember right, there was a family, one staff, one high school student, and one HMK student that all came positive recently. And that was an example of the kind of knee-jerk reaction you were hoping to avoid having, as far as those students being contained and that staff member being contained as well. And
Yeah,
there was that worry that there would be spread from the high school as a result of that student.
yeah, yeah. No, there was a lot of worry, and then all of a sudden, oh, you're going to be out of school for at least 7 days plus a negative COVID test before we let you come back. And
Oh
so then
yeah.
that means all of a sudden now, I mean, because we've got a whole one of the sports teams at the high school. I don't know whether it's been publicly released, so I won't say which one, but they had a student on that team test positive, and so now everybody on the team is quarantined all of a sudden. And of course, that's all of the grades and all of the subjects. And so I was only teaching one of my classes via Zoom because I only had one student that had signed up to do the virtual or the distance learning. And so now I'm going to have to get everything from both of my other subjects put onto Canvas as well and keep that
Oof.
up every single day for the ones that are now going to have to be out until at least the end of next week at the earliest, maybe even the following week, depending on how soon they can get in to get a test.
Oh, and that's on top of what you already have to normally do, like lesson plans, basic prep,
Mhm.
grading, all that kind of stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's in addition to all that extra. So, which is why I was running so far behind this evening that I'm still in the middle of trying to cook dinner because I had to stay and get a bunch of stuff put on Canvas that we did today in biology and earth science so that the students that have to learn from home now while they're quarantined can still keep up with their classmates in my classes.
Oh, dang, that sounds extremely tedious. I do not envy your situation.
Yeah, I sure hope this is the only year we have to do it this way.
Yeah, I hope so too. Well, that's all the questions I have. Do you have any for me?
Oh boy. I guess not. I see you regularly enough around town that I know you're doing really well. But boy, you've got a lot of irons in the fire with your beacon thing and your home care that you do. And there seemed like there was a third thing in there too, a third job or a third volunteer thing you did.
Yeah. So altogether, I am an after-school teacher through Beacon. I'm a part-time in-house caregiver. I mentor, and until recently, I was a drug test technician on the weekends for
Oh,
helping recovering addicts stay on track with drug court and DCFS.
right.
But this will be my last weekend doing that this week, and I just recently signed up for being a dishwasher on Sundays at a local restaurant over here.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm pretty packed. I'm actually hoping to eventually reach a point where maybe, um, as you know, I train in martial arts, so
Yeah.
I'm hoping to reach a point where maybe like I can teach martial arts in the summer,
Hmm.
and then alternate between that and Beacon, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But of course, that's going to take time. It'll have taken me about a year or so once I get my green belt to have actually attained it. And that's just to reach the status of teaching children, never
Right.
mind teaching adults at black belt.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you for coming on. I know you're an extremely busy person, and I am honored to say that you were my teacher. You had an impact on me,
Thank you.
obviously. And if I'm indication, you've probably had a bigger impact than you could know on your students as well. And if there's anything that we in the community can do to help you make your job easier, all that, please let us know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been my pleasure to talk to you a little bit this evening about things.
Terrific. Be safe out there, be healthy, and I'll definitely be seeing you the next time I have to come to the high school for one of my jobs.
All right, that sounds good to me. You know where to find
All
me.
right. Yep. Take care. Hi, I'm Christopher Cleveland, creator, host, and director of Autism Fridays with Christopher Cleveland. I am a certified secondary education provider located in Moab, Utah, and I'm here to tell you about my show, Autism Fridays with Christopher Cleveland. If you wish to have optimistic, educational, humorous, fun content which holds ideas for age-appropriate discussions for your autistic child or other relative about the COVID-19 crisis and your state's related efforts to curb its spread, subscribe to my YouTube channel or join the Facebook group Autism Fridays with Christopher Cleveland today.